and I remember you saying some of this as well when we met up, of information about things that, people have never come across notes or surveys or different things like that. How often is that the case? Like this is new information on stuff that's 150, 200 years old.
More often than you would think, because there's just so much history out there. For one thing, that and it's always easier. I mean, it's kind of the human condition, the human nature to take the easiest path, and but and so you kind of just go and grab what's kind of right in front of you. That's always easier. But those of us who dig, I come out of a law enforcement background, investigating, digging, because the goal is not what's easy, but what's the truth. I mean, because well, in law enforcement, you're looking to put somebody in prison potentially, whereas here you're not putting them in prison as a historian, but you are indicting them in the historical record. And if you are going to make a claim or or accusation or an assertion of something positive too. I mean, you're making a claim. And so you really want to dig as deep as possible and find out what's out there, or I do. And most of the scholars that I work with, that's the goal. But also it's a product of sometimes records just, were in a circumstance. They were lost and forgotten in somebody's attic, or in the case of forged records, they were in continual transition. They belonged to the United Daughters of the Confederacy, and they would find a place that they didn't have their own place to house them and make them available to researchers. And so they would find a place, and they would be there for a little while, and maybe there's a researcher working on it at that time or not, that even is interested in those records, because that's the other thing is, you've got to have somebody out there who's interested in that particular topic to and that finds out about them. Um, um, and if they're not, then then they move on, they transition, and then they're not available. They're just in storage somewhere for sometimes decades at a time. But they finally found a good home at the Haley Library in Midland. And so that's a privately funded library. The J. Evetts Haley family. It's the Nita and J. Evetts Haley Library, I believe, in Midland. And they may have that name wrong, but anyhow, they provided a home, and then a session. That's the other problem, is a lot of times records get donated to an archive, but if the money and the staff is not there to fully accession them, then it's not really known what's in those records. And so, researchers, especially grad students, they have limited time and limited funds to travel somewhere. And we're getting into the digital age where more of this stuff is getting digitized, and it's getting easier. But this is even before that. And so before that, you don't have, if they're not all digitized and just online, you've got to go there and sift through those records. And it could be thousands, even tens of thousands of pages. And so you want some type of guide, index to go through. And they hired a fellow out there that just did the most amazing index that I've ever seen in an archive, and really fully accession those papers so that we could really target. And because even we had limited time, and we were able to really target and say, okay, we're using that index he had created. We want this file, we want that file. We don't need all those files. And that really, expedites the process when you have really fully fleshed out accessioning and indexes and so forth.